This is your coffee break. Hi friends, Sarah from the Right Now podcast here, and I am so excited to present to you today's featured author, Renita Bryant. She is here with us to talk about what it means to be an indie author, having her own publishing company, and all sorts of amazing things. Welcome to the show, Renita.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So tell me a little bit, you're kind of in this writing entrepreneurship kind of place. Tell me a little bit about your story.
So, some years ago, life kind of reminded me that it happens to you and things happen when you don't necessarily want them to. And so, I had a few things happen to me in terms of just losing loved ones and having to really deal with the complexities of life. And so, I ventured out and started writing. I've been writing ever since I was 7 years old, writing poems and short stories. But this was really my first time jumping into writing and trying to write something that I was feeling and that was deeply I was passionate about and that was deeply connected to me. And so I started writing, and I was still in corporate America and going about my day job and my traditional jobs. But writing kept calling my name. And so after some years, I actually left corporate and started a couple of companies. And one of those was a publishing company. I actually started My Matters, the publishing company, while I was still at a global $85 billion corporate firm. And I don't know what convinced me to jump out and leave that stability and comfort of corporate. But sometimes, when the story's in you and you want to get the story out there, you have to just leave the comfort and go and share your story with the world. And that's what I decided to do.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I think that that's the dream of so many writers, is to, okay, I'm working my corporate day job. I just want to be free. I want to make that jump. And I know you kind of said you're not sure what propelled you to do it, but I'm going to ask anyway. So like what was the little final push?
I actually took some time when I was in corporate. I took 3 months off, decided to travel. I traveled to 5 countries. I left with a friend of mine. We both decided, let's take a sabbatical. That was probably the worst thing for me in terms of my corporate career. Actually, having the freedom to get up when I wanted to see the world, to experience new things, to meet new people. It just reminded me that life is short. That's my own personal belief. Life is short. You only get this one moment. This is the only time that I know that I'll have on this earth. And so it's up to me to do what I can with it. And so because I believe that, I recognized in that moment that I cannot continue to spend my time investing into something that I didn't feel like I was getting the right outcome, right? It wasn't returning, it wasn't the best return on my investment. And so I decided at that moment, I went back because I promised my director that I would return. So I didn't want to burn any bridges. I didn't want to affect her career. But I went back and I knew within a few months I knew within a couple of days of being back that I would be leaving. And so I just started planning my exit at that point.
You started Mind Matters while you were sort of working that day job. How did that work? I mean, did you work and then like do this over your lunch and then go home? Like, how did that balance out?
I mean, that's a great the description of what really happened. So I started writing my first book yesterday morning. It was there during the time when I actually lived in Philadelphia, and I recently graduated from my graduate program. And so I was living on my own, exploring life. And like I said, some things happened. So I started writing. And then I did a lot of research and recognized some of the barriers to being able to traditionally publish, some of the barriers in terms of how I felt about profitability, some of the barriers in terms or the answers to the questions that I had to ask myself in terms of my objective. What was I really trying to do and get out of the process? And so because I knew what I was trying to get out of it and what mattered to me, I had to make some decisions that aligned with my objective, right? And so for me, it wasn't necessarily going to one of the large traditional publishing houses. It was self-publishing. And so that was a path that worked for me, that made sense for me. And so I decided to do that. And then in the process, I launched My Matters Publishing really as a way for me to launch my own books and be
Perfect.
able to support myself. And then a few years after that, I had a friend reach out to me, one of my best friends, my best friend actually, and she wanted to publish a book. And she looked at me and said, "Are you going to help me?" Because I kept saying I would not. I would give advice. I helped a lot of people. I guided them and consulted for free. I never charged anyone for it because my vision was not to make My Matters, a consultancy. It was never to do that. It wasn't that I was closed to it. It just, that was never my plan. So anytime someone would ask, me to help them. I just did it for free. I never thought to even bring them in as a client, right? So smart of me. And so
I'm the same
so
way.
giving. It's so giving. And so after, she came to me and she made that request, I decided in that moment to start opening up to other people and start working with other people. And so that was around, it was 2013 when I published Yesterday Morning. It was around 2014 going into 2015 when my friend approached me.
Hmm.
And so ever since that point, I started taking on clients, and the business, is interesting. I'm now shocked that I wasn't taking on clients before that moment. I mean, I haven't had to do a lot of promoting. It's just been a lot of word of mouth, great customer service and great customer satisfaction, great outcomes for clients. And so people are pleased and they send other people our way, which has been remarkable. Let me make sure I'm answering your question
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I was working. I want to
Oh,
make sure I
yeah.
was working, but I don't want anyone from my former job to listen and think I was doing this when I was supposed to be working on projects. I really worked I really took on clients for My Matters after I'd already left my corporate job. It was the work that I was doing with My Matters for my own book that was occurring at the same time as me working in corporate.
So I want to know about Mind Matters Publishing. What do you do, and how do you help clients? And tell me all about it.
It was born out of recognizing that there's so much complexity and so much confusion in the publishing process. And so seeing friends of friends have these questions. And even though there are many books out there, you can really create a book for yourself online, right? You create an ebook in a few minutes if you want to. I mean, it may not be any good, so maybe you want to spend more than a few minutes. But I mean, there's so many tools that make it easy for you, or that are supposed to. But there are people that are still they still want to be guided. They still want to have someone explain things to them, to work with them, to have a vested interest in their success. And they also want to make sure it's a very personal thing to release your story to the world
Mhm.
and to tell people what's on your heart and your mind, or to try to create your platform or build a platform through these words. And so for me, My Matters was really born out of trying to enable people that I knew and that had these questions, or had that felt that it was a complex process, really trying to help them simplify it.
Mhm.
And so when we take on clients, and we first have a clarity session, we offer a free 30-minute clarity session. A lot of times it ends up going to an hour because I don't try to push the process. I want to really make sure I'm understanding what they're looking for, what their objective is. That's the first question. And a lot of that is born from my corporate experience. When I was in marketing strategy and market research, one of the first questions you really need to understand is why. And so we sit down and we talk to authors or aspiring writers. Some of them are current authors, and we talk to them about, their objective. What are you really trying to get from this? We have realistic conversations with them. We want them to understand their roles, how this will change their lives, what their expectations will be of themselves, what are their expectations of their family, their friends, and us.
Mhm.
So we have some very thorough, in-depth conversations with them from the beginning. And then we just start working with them. We guide them through the process. We incorporate things like reader research. We are very focused on being consumer centric or reader centric. And so there's no point in publishing a book if you have no concept or no idea about who's actually going to read it. So again, because of my marketing background and strategy background and market research background, understanding your target reader is very important. So we make sure we integrate that into the entire process. But that's really, I mean, that's the gist of what we do, is really about making sure that we guide our customers through a satisfactory process. And in the end, they feel good about what they put out and they're ready to share their stories.
Do you do mostly through self-publishing then?
Yes. Yeah, it's been a great process just in terms of where the business has gone and how the business is growing.
Tell me a little bit about that, how you grow a business like that.
Honestly, it's been well, it's a few different things that we think about. So one is being able to understand how you can be product based. So
Mm.
we're thinking about, 3 years, 5 years from now, what types of products need to be available, what types of tools need to be available for authors, for even some of the larger publishing houses. What will help make their jobs easier, and the role that they play in the author's lives, what would make the author's life, what would make that easier. So we start to think about products, again, trying to merge my experience in marketing and working at a consumer company. I've also worked at a biopharmaceutical company. So being able to understand how that side of a business works and then bring that into publishing, that's one of the things that we're looking to do in terms of business ownership. So beyond me being an author and having and holding hands and guiding and helping them through the emotional process of releasing or launching a book, And being a business owner, I have to think with a different mindset, right? So it's not just about guiding them. It's not just about consulting and making sure that we're going through the process and I'm holding their hands through the process, but it's really about, thinking long term in terms of what products we can and tools could be available and what we need to produce or create.
Mm.
It's also about thinking about profitability. It's thinking about operations. How do I manage a team? When is the appropriate time to bring on other people to join the team? It's been interesting, growing a business. You were asking, how do you grow a business like this? You grow it, to me, you grow it one day at a time, but then vision, right? I know that sounds weird to say it because you're doing both at the same time. Every day I'm learning different things in terms of just even being clearer about my leadership style or my management style or what I want the business to be, when it grows up, so to speak. And
Mm.
so not only am I having to be present in the here and now of today, but really having to think 5 years from now, what will be happening in the publishing world or the publishing industry, and how can my matters really lead the way in some of that? Again, blending my worlds as I've had all these different experiences. How do I bring that into publishing and make it something that people want to buy into and people need? Not just that they want to buy it, but they actually need it and it adds value.
It sounds like you're a planner. I hear a lot of that. That's what you help other writers do is plan. So, can you tell me a little bit about just what that means as a creative person, if your planning ever gets in the way of being creative or vice versa?
So it's interesting you say that. I would definitely say that I'm a scenario planner. I believe in forecasting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm one of those people that, instead of just looking at the long term, I have to think about, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? I like to be prepared, but not, I mean, it's not, to me, it's not that bad, but I mean, you have to ask friends and family, right? They'll probably tell you a truth that I wouldn't admit. So I definitely like to plan. I definitely like to think about the what ifs. I like contingency planning. And so I work with our clients to do some of that same thinking, that same type of planning. The creativity isn't stifled because of it. Again, that's from my biased opinion. I don't think that I lose creativity, but I'm sure at times, though, trying to think so much about the what if, you don't really allow your mind to just be free to say, this is what will be.
Hmm.
And so you can look at that. I can look at that two ways. I'm also a Libra and, an what is it, an ENTP?
Oh,
Yeah, so you talked about the personality types on one of your latest podcasts. And I looked up mine. And so one of the things is that I look at things from different perspectives. So one of the perspectives could be that while I'm scenario planning, I allow myself to be free in that scenario and in that planning to be creative. So
hmm.
I'm creative, but it does have some boundaries on it. However, someone else could compare that and say that that's still stifling creativity to a certain point. So I definitely have to find balance. Because we want our clients to make sure that or be able to be free with the process and what they're putting out into the market.
You talked about this balance, but you also talked a little bit about limits, and I really appreciate that. I think that sometimes in order to just free our minds and be more creative, we need a little bit of planning and a little bit of limits. So I really appreciate you saying that. A lot of people, like myself included, are writers, and we come purely from this creative background. We come from this, like, oh, I was an English major and I studied poetry. I don't know anything about being an entrepreneur or business or anything like that. What would you say that's crucial for a modern author or a writer to know business wise that maybe we didn't learn from our English curriculums?
There's so many pieces. So right, how you struggle sometimes with which question,
Mm-hmm.
how they're battling in your minds. Because the first thing that actually came to mind is something that I say to entrepreneurs, even people that have business backgrounds, is know your numbers. And I say that from the viewpoint of even for people that want to publish a book, right? They want to write, they want to produce something. There's an investment. So there's your time and energy investment to create, but there's also a financial investment. And I do think sometimes people come into the process without having a very clear understanding of what they're willing to invest in it. Again, from all of those different aspects, their time, their energy, their brain power, and their money. Sometimes people get caught up because they don't have that clarity. They can overspend in the process because they don't have that clarity. Sometimes they can have an expectation and they want to underspend, like they don't really understand the true value of what they're about to endure.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I would think, if you want to start a business, if you want to make writing and publishing books and being an author, an actual full-time job for you in terms of building your platform and developing your readership, I would definitely say that it starts with having that business mindset around goals and objectives of your numbers. What are you trying to accomplish? How do you make sure that you're keeping your financials in order, keeping track of things? Like this is very not this is not at all creative. So the advice that I'm giving is totally opposite of, when I think someone who's truly on the end of the spectrum as being a pure creative, I know that most people aren't offering the advice of saying, hey, no, it's about the numbers, get deep into the numbers. But I say that because you can't be a successful business owner if you don't manage your money, if you don't have money, right? You can sell thousands of widgets or
Mhm.
thousands of books, but if you aren't managing your profit margins, if you don't understand how much it costs you to make that book, and if you're just going to book signings and it looks good on social media because you're at every event that's happening, but you're flying around and staying at hotel rooms and
Mhm.
renting cars, and you're not tracking how much that cost you to be able to do it. It looks good and you can say you've sold thousands of books, but in the end, you may still find yourself without any money in your pocket. And so I think authors have to do a better job of, when they're trying to develop it as a business, they have to really think with that business mind of, how do I increase my profitability during this process to get the most out of it and still be able to be true to the dream that I want to create for myself.
Yes, to that so much. And it's something that gets totally skipped over, and then that's where you get the starving artists, right? That are
Yes.
working like three jobs at different coffee shops trying to make ends meet while they write their screenplay or what have you. What is the number one, is there a planning tool you would recommend? Is it just, hey, understand how much you need to live and then go walk backwards from there? Or is there a tip that you can give about understanding your numbers?
So that is interesting that you say that, Sarah. That's something that I'm working on.
Ooh.
Um, I actually co-facilitate workshops with a fellow entrepreneur in Georgia, and we talk about the walkaway number. There are a lot of people that would like to leave their full-time jobs and start a business and be an entrepreneur. Maybe they want to write full-time. And so one of the things that we talk about, or we discuss in the train, one of our workshops, is understanding your walkaway number and being able to calculate that. That's a very simple calculation. Often, what we find is that people have already decided that they need a certain amount of money to live. So they may equate that to being whatever their paycheck is, their take home pay,
Hmm.
right? They assume this is, of course, how much I need. This is how much I make now. I'm able to live, and I'm not swimming around in millions like that duck show that used to be on the cartoon show that, he was just swimming in his money,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not him. So clearly, this is how much I need. And when they actually do the calculations, when they really think through, what would your lifestyle change be? What are some of the expenses that would go away? And what are some of the new expenses that could come, right? What kind of changes can you really make to your lifestyle to be able to support your dream and move you forward in that dream? When they really start to do those calculations, most people find that they need around 50% of what they actually thought they needed. And that's what I found out in corporate. And that's one of the things that helped me to move forward. And by the time I got back from my sabbatical, when I left in less than a year. And that was one of the main exercises that I did, was understanding my walkaway number and knowing how much money I needed. And when I got that amount, being able to walk out the door
Mhm.
comfortably. So I would definitely say that in terms of planning tools, I wish I could give some great tools out there that I'm pretty sure that there are several that exist. For me, some of my basic ones it's just more natural for me, I guess, because I can scenario plan so much and over plan.
Mhm.
So I just think through a lot of different things. Whatever the situation calls for, I end up just coming up with a way to process it in that moment, which probably is not in any way helpful to your listener,
Oh,
but it's just the actual answer.
I appreciate that.
I try to be very transparent.
I
So
love it. I love it. I love it. I even love that you were able to share that. Like that's so interesting, and it's something that so many writers want to walk away with, but they're not prepared. They're not prepared for this. And so, boy, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate your honesty. I also want to kind of go back a little bit. Where did you go on your sabbatical?
I went to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the Czech Republic, and to the UK.
That sounds incredible and just kind of all over the place. Like, was there a, yeah, tell me all about it.
It was amazing. The only country that I had traveled to before my sabbatical was, I had been to Johannesburg
Hmm.
in South Africa, and that was it. I believe that was it. yeah, so all the other four countries, that was my first time ever going. I'd always wanted to go to Australia. I really didn't think too much about New Zealand until a former coworker of mine, mentioned living there for a short period of time and how amazing it was and how peaceful it was.
Mm.
And so I decided, hey, how many times will I really just venture off to Australia and take a 3 month sabbatical? So I thought, why not, check it out while I'm there? And it was amazing. It's honestly one of the places I'd love to go back to.
Mm.
I had a great time over there. We got to see the world, going to Cape Town. I actually went back to Cape Town this past November. Love it. Honestly, would move over there in a heartbeat.
Mm.
I met a writer who actually lives there. We were in a coffee shop. This is how ironic. So I was there with a group of friends. We were in a coffee shop and we met this woman who happened to be from Atlanta, which
Oh,
is where I live now. And so she happened to be from Atlanta. She actually writes for an online magazine, and she travels there 6 months out of the year and lives in Cape Town. And she had visited there in 2013, loved it so much, and so ever since then she just goes back and forth from between the U.S. and South Africa, which sounds pretty amazing.
yes.
And yeah, she seems so happy. She said her quality of life is amazing because it's so inexpensive over there. So and it's beautiful. Cape Town is a beautiful city.
Mm.
And so that was great. And then going to the Czech Republic, it was interesting. I don't know how we ended up in Prague. Um, now that I think about it, it's nothing against Prague, but it was we went in my sabbatical was in November, and it got dark around like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It
Oh,
was it was a weird thing when you can't really sleep in because if you get up too late, it'll be nighttime again.
oh, that's
Um,
so weird.
yeah, but that was my first time trying like what is it, mulled wine, and just seeing some of the architecture. It was great. There were very friendly people. And then we went to London, and that was also really great. That was my first time in London, and I just had a really good time. It was an experience that allowed me to just be free and
Mm.
be myself and understand what I liked, and really get to see the world and understand how different people lived. And I actually had already published my first book around that time or before that time. So I took some copies with me. I actually did a signing here literally right before I left to go on my sabbatical. So I really took advantage of the time and just enjoyed myself and enjoyed life.
Good. And it sounds like you came away with that with a lot of clarity.
Yes, 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 I did. It makes it easier to remember. We talked about the why. I've said that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know your why. When you get that a level of clarity, it makes it so much easier to know what you do or don't want, what you are willing and unwilling to deal with, or
Mm.
what you're unwilling to accept in your life and for your life. And so I think this sabbatical really helped me understand what I wanted out of my life and what I didn't want. And as much as I enjoyed my coworkers that I'd forged relationships with, I really appreciated the company. I worked for an amazing company. As much as I appreciated that time in my life and what they'd offered, it was just time for me to go and do something else. And the sabbatical it was a bridge to get me there. I think I needed to put my toe in the water before I just totally jumped in, and the sabbatical kind of helped me put my toe in the water.
Sabbaticals always seem so magical to me. I love that you took one. That is beautiful.
Yes,
Oh,
I do. Now, I don't advise everyone take one because, again, knowing numbers, I had to be very clear on that one because
mm,
it was unpaid. Sometimes people are lucky and get, great jobs. They give them paid sabbaticals. That was definitely 3 months with no money coming into my pocket. So I really had to plan and think about that, but fortunately, I was in a position to be able to afford it, to be able to take that time. But it was a sacrifice because when I
mm.
went back into corporate, I recognized that I had to replenish what I spent while I was gone. Because Sarah, I really thought I don't know if I thought I was a celebrity on sabbatical. I don't know how I was spending that much money, but I accomplished it. So it changed my walkaway number a little bit. It changed everything for me. But I soon got there. I got back there.
I love it. I love that you're willing to share that. That's so awesome. I know my husband and I never go on vacation. We went on one recently, and I had a little bit of sticker shock. I was like, "Oh yeah, this is what it's like to be
Yes.
like on the go all the time." It adds up. So I appreciate that. Okay, I want to ask about being an indie author. So you have one fiction book out now. Is that something, are you writing more? Are you writing a second one? Did you enjoy that whole experience? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, so I am in the process of writing the second book in the Morning series.
Yay.
So I'm working on my second book. I have three collections of poetry out. So two are in ebook only, and one actually came out last year that is in paperback. So the first book, my fiction book, Yesterday Morning, is a novella, which is actually increasing. More and more people are writing. I mean, they were bigger at a time, right? And then
Hmm.
I think sometimes when I published my book in 2013, most people didn't even know what I was talking about, which was surprising to me in terms of what is a novella. And so it's interesting to see, to read more and to see more that more people are recognizing the value and the benefit of writing novellas. Again, I'm pretty sure that's something that would be stunning for you because in terms of just the everyday consumer, the everyday reader, they were a little bit more surprised by novellas, seeing novellas in the market. It was interesting because again, that the story for me was one, and I know you have listeners who can come from an experience that they wrote a book about a part of their lives or a part of an experience that they lived through, right? That was very emotional for them,
Hmm.
good or bad. And so for me, because of what I was writing, the process of writing was very emotional. It
Hmm.
was very trying at times. But then deciding that I was going to publish was scary and it was overwhelming. And I was concerned that people would hate it and nobody would want to read it or what would my family think.
Hmm.
I had a little bit of that doubt, which again is why Mind Matters exists, and why I started taking on clients and working with people. But I definitely, as an author, you know, I procrastinated, and because my job was a great excuse to be able to. So why
Hmm.
should I have this book ready when, I work a traditional 9 to 5 and I'm busy. I have to hang out and go to brunch with my friends.
Hmm.
And so it was a process. It took longer than probably it needed to take. But I was so excited and so happy when I finally had my book in my hand. Like being able to just look at it now, I get I don't know, it makes me feel there's a certain level of fulfillment
Hmm.
that it provided to me because that's something that nobody can take away, right? That's something that I was able to produce. And even when I look at My Matters and look at the impact that we have on the world, there are authors that have our imprint on their spine, right? We will, and even if they went and they decided to sign with a larger publishing house, which will be great for them, right? If that's what they want, if that's their objective, that will be awesome for them. But in terms of that first book, it has our name on it. They have that first experience with us, and that's why we want to make sure it's great for them because I know what my first experience felt like. I know what it felt like to get my first delivery. I mean, it's something about being an author. And I will say, in terms of the indie network, that was one of the most surprising things. I didn't expect for people to be, mean or nasty or anything like that, but people are so willing to help you.
Hmm.
The network is so strong, and just trying to navigate it and talking to people in different, whether it was on, Goodreads or whether there was there were some other groups at the time when I first started that I was more involved in, and just being able to work with people and find out different avenues to take and them to give you suggestions, or I don't know, it was just something about being a part of that community or being a part of the indie community that felt like you have partners here, you have friends here, you have people that actually care,
Hmm.
and you're trying to help each other. It wasn't some of the we're competitors. It was really about we are helping. We're partners in this. We're all trying to get to the top, and all boats can rise. We don't have to.
Hmm.
I don't have to sink your ship in order for my ship to be successful. And that was something that was so amazing for me as a first time author to be able to see how connected the network really, really was.
Just speaking of that network, how would a new writer who maybe hasn't published before, how would they sort of get into that network? Was it through like Facebook or Twitter or anything in particular?
There are probably even more networks now because I wish, of course, because we're having this conversation, right? My brain is not
Oh.
processing some of the networks. I think I told you this before, because I remember there was a specific network that I got involved with that was so supportive, and of course, this adds no value to the listener, right? So
No,
I
that's
will
fine.
tell you, I will tell you that one of the things was I was on Goodreads, and there were author groups, there were indie author groups, and so being able to sign up for some of the indie author groups that were on Goodreads was actually helpful. And they had the process of being able to have people that would do reviews, and it wasn't the quid pro quo, hey, you
Mm.
give me a 5 star, I give you a 5 star, because you have to be careful about that. It wasn't anything like paying people to give you reviews, but it was really getting some great feedback. And so for every book that, of course, I reviewed, the person that was reviewing my book was not the same person. So we were actually in a group of about 6 or 7 different authors, and we
Oh.
take time. getting to know each other and reading the different books. And you were on a schedule. So I forget if it was like a book every couple of weeks or every 3 weeks, but we were on, we were rotating. And it was great because you got multiple people got to read your book. They got to give you feedback on it. They gave you their real opinions. And you could choose, of course, if they said, hey, I thought it was a 1 star, I didn't really like, they're going to be honest because again, it's not a quid pro quo. They have to be concerned about what kind of rating you're going to give them. And so it wasn't that type of system. So you really got some great, honest feedback from the beginning. So that was one of the things that was helpful with some of those Goodreads groups. Now they have a lot of author groups on social media. You have to be careful. They'll make sure you get into some quality ones where there's not a lot of spamming, where people aren't just saying buy my book and posting their book cover, every 5 seconds. But there are some those. There are definitely some groups out there. So I would say to someone who's new in the industry, who's really trying to find their way, as I said before about the network being so strong and being like partners, you actually you can ask questions. So even in that, that Goodreads group, if you can identify one solid network or one solid group of people, those 5 or 6 people will then connect you to 5 or 6 other networks and people. And you'll be surprised at how quickly, it just exponentially grows from there. But you really just need 1 or 2 to get you in the door. So that's what I would say. Start, with some of the social media pages, looking at indie authors. Some of the suggestions I would also give are offline. Maybe going to your local library. I work with the library system here in the outskirts of Atlanta, and they've just right after Indie Author Day, they had all these events during Indie Author Month. And then they put together kind of an indie author connection. They started a private Facebook group. They're really trying to help them understand how they can get their books into the library system. They're trying to work with them to have a lot of events. And that's because as an indie author, my second business, my consulting company, that's a client of mine, that library system. So I was able to talk to them when they asked me for suggestions. I was able to talk to them and say, this is what an indie author really needs. This is the type of support that they need. And so I was able to bring that experience to them and make sure that, it was something that was going to be beneficial for the authors. So I would definitely tell the authors that they can get together or even as an individual person, go into your local libraries too. See what your local communities can offer you in terms of how you can promote your book and how you can work with other authors to be able to do some great things.
Where can people find you online? How can they find Mind Matters? Tell me all the places people can connect with you.
So on Facebook, it's Mind Matters Publishing, and that's MYND. So yeah, we've been saying Mind Matters. Want to make sure people know it's MYND, MATTERS Publishing. And then the website is mindmatterspublishing.com. And then if they would like to send me an email, they can always email me at Renita, that's RENITA, at mindmatterspublishing.com.
Renita, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. Thank you for reaching out. This is awesome.
This really has been great. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, good.
Just for allowing me to be on your show.
Oh my gosh. Well, the pleasure has been mine. I love doing copywriting. I learned so much.